I want to bring in my guest, though. We are joined with the man of the hour, Laith Marouf. Laith Marouf is award-winning multimedia producer and broadcasting law consultant. Laith, thank you, my man. How you doing this morning? You doing okay?
Good to be with you, Jamal. I'm doing great.
Oh, man, it's good to have you. Laith, I am trying to understand what is happening in Gaza right now. It seems that Netanyahu is doing any and everything in his power to blow off any kind of peace agreement. I don't even think at this point they're moving to the second phase of the peace agreement. My understanding is that Israel has cut off all humanitarian aid going into Gaza at this point. Effectively, we are resuming the war of starvation on the local population. What is happening on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. They are resuming the war of starvation on the Palestinian people in Gaza. And they're doing it out of spite because of the that Ramadan is now there, and people in Gaza had the audacity to celebrate the first night of Ramadan, and thus, we know how colonizers hate joy in the eyes of the indigenous, and that's what they're doing. So obviously, what Netanyahu and the Jewish white supremacists around him have learned from the 16 months that passed is that they can get away with anything as long as there's no military power to stop them, that the Western elite will protect them and coddle them and make sure that there's no legal or political consequences for their war crimes and crimes against humanity. So as long as there's nobody that will militarily stop the Zionists, they will continue on this project to ethnically cleanse and or genocide the Palestinians from their homelands.
I guess my thing is Egypt and Jordan have said no, so the expulsion plan is off the table. Egypt at some point put out a $20 billion plan in order to rebuild Gaza. But again, all of that is fitting kind of within the context of the war now. Um, so the ceasefire is over with. Is that fair to say?
I mean, it's not sure that it's totally over with, but obviously, because the expulsion plan or the ethnic cleansing plan is off the table because the Jordanian and Egyptian vassal regimes are scared that they will collapse if they go on with what Master in the White House wanted. That means that we're back to plan A, which is the genocide. If you can't push out the Palestinians, you have to kill them. Otherwise, there is no Jewish majority in historical Palestine. It's been now almost a decade that the Palestinians have bounced back to being the majority within the historical lands of Palestine, and that's a formula for the dissolution of the colony. It can't exist as a Jewish supremacist colony if the majority of the population is not. So, we saw today the Israelis shoot at anybody approaching the crossing points into Gaza.
Right.
All the trucks have been turned around. There resumed bombardments of parts of Gaza. There was at least like 10 martyrs, victims over the last 24 hours in these bombardments. And at the same time, we are getting conflicting messages from the Israeli elites. So Katz, the foreign affairs minister, just said right now that they're ready to negotiate phase two. That's like less than 12 hours from statements from other ministers saying there will be no phase two. So
Right.
it's very confusing what they want, and I think they don't even know what they want to do, the Zionists themselves.
So there's a report that's saying Gaza must demilitarize before the next phase of the ceasefire. This is coming out of Al Jazeera saying that Israel is now saying this. But as you pointed out, I've heard multiple things. I've heard in one part, we are ready to negotiate phase two. And I've heard there is no phase two going forward. Apparently, they said that the hostages that were released were being humiliated by Hamas fighters standing there. Okay, that's nonsense, right? Um, give me your take, your best take of what's happening.
You know, it's funny. Of course, it's funny how severe the opposite day syndrome is with the Zionists when Israeli prisoners of war are treated nicely and given gifts and dressed up well and fed and given medical care, and people, shaking hands with them and putting them on an ambulance back to their home. That's humiliation.
Yeah,
And starvation of Palestinian prisoners and their torture and
beating,
abuse and putting
starvation.
them,
Yeah,
yeah, and putting them in t-shirts with stars of David on them, and throwing the dead bodies in piles of bags in the back of truck and just with no names, no identifier. That's treating the Palestinians well.
that's
So
humane. Yeah,
everything that the Zionists say is now in the upside down world, and it's crazy uh, how docile the Western media has become.
yes,
60 months ago, remember, they used to try to convince you that Israel is not attacking hospitals, or Israel is not attacking mosques, or Israel is not killing children or women. Now they don't give a damn anymore, the Western media. And that's also shows you how ineffective the Western populations have been in trying to influence their governments to stop these war crimes, or trying to influence the mainstream media. So, in a way, like as a Palestinian, as an Arab, I have lost any hope in bringing any change through the population in the West, doing social movements or whatever it is. Clearly, the Western elite don't care about the opinions of their populations, and clearly the Western populations are impotent to assert any change, even to save themselves. Forget the Palestinians. I don't think like anyone in the U.S. or Canada or Europe can get themselves better healthcare or better racial relations, or better working conditions or better education, let alone try to come and help the Palestinians end the complicity of those governments that they represent them
yeah.
in this genocide. So.
Hamas is saying that they are willing to not be part of the post-war government, providing that there's a national consensus. That basically, if the public votes and they vote us out, fair enough, we accept that. But obviously, we're not going to evaporate. We're still a power, even if we're not in power. Egypt is saying they have a $53 billion plan now. It's gone up over the course of 5 years. And in that plan, they're talking about a transitional government into something else. They're talking about building an airport, a harbor, effectively rebuilding this area. I mean, where do you think this goes? Does this have legs? I mean, Israel's main issue, we don't want Hamas in charge. Hamas says, okay, fair enough. We don't need to be in charge, but obviously we're human beings. We're going to be here, even if we're not necessarily Hamas, and even if we're not necessarily in charge. And they seem to be accepting, seems to be, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this plan to rebuild the area and the guys, or let's say the premise that they are not in power. What do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, look, Hamas is trying to walk uh, to the path till the end with the Zionists, who always, in general, never, you know, and their word doesn't hold. So this is also all crazy talk, because the Palestinian Authority, for instance, that could be a replacement for Hamas in Gaza, doesn't have any support in Gaza, let alone
Mhm.
inside the West Bank, and doesn't have the might, or whether even if it's weapons and or enough troops to hold on to Gaza on behalf of the West. So it's already a impossible. Okay, with even if Hamas just steps aside. The other thing is that if the Palestinians have been denied the right to a democratic election since Hamas won the last election in 2005 or whatever it is right now. It's like so many years ago. So the Palestinians have been denied this democratic right because everybody knows that even if Hamas didn't win, clearly the Palestinian Authority, Fatah, and Mahmoud Abbas will be demolished in any election. Okay, they
Yeah.
will cease to exist. Okay, they probably will get less than 2%, 3% of the vote. And over the last decade, there's been many attempts by Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the PFLP and other Palestinian groups to create a unity government with these collaborators in the Palestinian Authority of Mahmoud Abbas. And every time it was getting to the last stage, it was Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority that collapsed the efforts, whether it was the meetings in Algiers, in Moscow, in Peking, you know, so many capitals opened their doors to try to bring a unity government with between Mahmoud Abbas and the other Palestinian factions, and it's not worked. So Mahmoud Abbas is not has no intention of allowing a national unity government to be formed. He wants to stay probably in power till he dies, and we all Palestinians pray every day for his death, actually, and demise,
Yeah.
even if it's natural causes. The guy is almost 90 years old, and the minute uh, Mahmoud Abbas ceases to exist, I don't know what the Israelis are going to do. There's going to be nothing left to stop the Palestinian people coming together. So, in the meanwhile, $53 billion to rebuild Gaza, that's probably going to be even on a low side of the costs of to rebuild the whole province. And even if they start today, it's going to take uh, probably a decade to rebuild the place. Israel never allowed a port or an airport to exist in Gaza before, so
Right.
why would they allow it now? A lot of things that are being thrown out right now are in the imaginary realm, because what is going to decide everything is what's on the ground in Gaza. Everything else is just talk, a hot air and blowing in the air.
Yeah, but I do get that. But there is going to be an endpoint. Or do you think there's not going to be an endpoint? Like, I see. And I guess I agree with this take. It's a settler colonial state, and they have an objective to either expel everybody or kill everybody. So this idea that they're going to build a harbor, a port, that they're going to build hotels, they're going to make this a good property, it's nonsense. That's not the objective. The objective is a constant, persistent objective of taking the land. Is that your take? That these deals, these are just things that they're talking about. And the reality of it is, this is a war. This war is going to continue to take place until either Israel collapses or the Palestinian population is all murdered or expelled. Is that your take? I mean, give me your take. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what it
No,
sounds like.
I mean, you are right there. Look, the we're right now in the break between the two halves of the game, okay, of the war that started 16 months ago. We're now in a pause, and it's going to come back. This war, both in Gaza and as we see in the West Bank, is ongoing and it's accelerating, and even in Lebanon and maybe in Syria and Iran. And what we see with the United States withdrawing its military support and its funding of Ukraine, this is all now being diverted directly into
Into
the
Israel.
Zionist colony, right? And they're preparing for the next stage of the war. They know that if there's a secession complete cessation of hostilities, okay, and a actual pause of killing, then it is the reckoning time for the leadership of Israel, for its military leaders, for the Western elite, for the Western media. It will be reckoning time, right? Everybody's going to be put into question whether internally in Israel, having all these internal investigations about their failures and or the corruption or what have you, that will accelerate the collapse internally of Israel, and or in the West with all these court cases that are now piling, that are going to start reaching Western elected politicians that voted for and supported the genocide in Gaza. So there's no way that the Zionist colony and the West that backs it will allow a total cessation of hostility right now, because of what will happen if such thing happens. So we're right now all waiting for the moment when Israel says they have enough weapons and enough cash to re-trigger a wider war again and try to finish off the Palestinians and the resistance in Lebanon, and or even attack Israel with those thousands upon thousands of bunker buster bombs that Trump is delivering. Something right like now 40 or 50 billion dollars of weapons delivered in the last month since the beginning of Trump's term. So I don't see anything hopeful coming out anytime soon, and everything that we will hear from now till the retriggering of the full-scale military hostilities is just wasting time and diversion of attention.
So just be clear, you don't believe that the second phase of the ceasefire will be implemented, that ultimately, whether it's now or whether it's later, Netanyahu will do everything he can, and he has, by the way, to destroy the deal in order to get back to hostilities, and basically to get back to an open warfare environment.
Yes, yes. I think, and even if they do move into the second phase, it will not be a complete situation. As we saw how even in the first phase, everything was delayed here, delayed there, stretched here, stretched there, bad statements by Israel one day, another statement that's good, and everybody's very confused. And by the way, they're already re-arresting some of the Palestinian prisoners that were released over the last few weeks in the West Bank. It's ridiculous, obviously, and every day we're hearing a different Palestinian prisoner dying inside Israeli jails from torture and mistreatment and rape and what have you. Every day, every day. So none of what happened already in the first phase is optimistic for anybody. Yeah.
What is the Palestinian Authority doing in the West Bank when Israel is killing these people or bulldozing the streets, destroying property? What is their role? What are they doing in the West Bank as this is happening?
Yeah, I mean, the Palestinian Authority is like the Vichy regime during the Nazi occupation of France. They have been actually rounding up Palestinian well-known figures in the West Bank that are not even armed. They're rounding up any opposition to the Palestinian Authority, even writers and thinkers. This is above and beyond their raids that the Palestinian Authority security forces are conducting on villages around Jenin, Tulkarem, and Nablus, to kind of preempt the Israeli invasion into those villages by nabbing anyone that could be associated with the resistance and could resist invasion of those villages. So this is happening while, of course, the Israelis have totally destroyed the Jenin refugee camp, the Tulkarem refugee camp, and the Nur Shams refugee camp outside Nablus, and have now moved into the three cities proper, trying to ethnically cleanse, neighborhood by neighborhood, while the Palestinian Authority is just sitting there and watching and probably even giving them directives and or lists of names of people that the Israelis should arrest and or kill. And so there is no hope in such a regime to somehow care for the Palestinian people. The Palestinian Authority is the Vichy regime reincarnated. The only thing forward for the Palestinians in the West Bank and globally, I think, is to try to take out the Palestinian Authority and Mahmoud Abbas's cabal from control. And this is, important for Palestinians that are in the diaspora in the West, that have been demonstrating in front of Israeli embassies and so forth for 16 months. They should be actually demonstrating at the Palestinian Authority missions. They should be taking over those missions. They should be throwing out the representatives of Mahmoud Abbas and appointing their own representation. By the way, for our listeners to understand, the vast majority of Palestinians in the world are in diaspora. They're not inside Palestine, whether it's the West Bank, Gaza, or the 1948 territories. 2/3 of the Palestinians are in exile around the world, and they have no say in either the elections that happen inside Palestine and or what's happening in these structures of the Palestinian Liberation Organization and these embassies. And it is time right now for these Palestinian communities to take lead since they have the most freedom. Freedom, unlike the people in Gaza and the West Bank are being under guns and or the Palestinian refugees that are in the Arabic countries near them that are silenced by the collaborative regimes like Jordan and Egypt. The Palestinians in the Western diaspora have a duty and an ability to do things that their brothers and sisters elsewhere can't.
I was having a conversation with Dan Kabalik, and Dan pointed out, he says, look, Israel may be riding high now, but this is not going to last. And his point was, they're overextended. And B, on top of being overextended, they believe that the United States is going to be, let's say, back them for the foreseeable future as they go about doing all of this, but that it can't last, that there's no way that they can live under these contradictions. I mean, for God's sake, you've killed all of these people, you've murdered all of these children, you've stolen all of this territory. The rest of the world considers you a pariah. Is he right, though? I mean, is it possible for a pariah state to exist with the assistance of the United States by itself? And again, this is also goes into this idea of Israel is supposed to be a safe place. It is not. They've lost. The economy has in tatters. The number of people, millions of people have fled the country. Meaning, how can you have a country of Israel if indeed it's not safe, if it's supposed to be a safe place? That was his point, that at some point it collapses. It can't function. Give me your take on that. I mean, do you see it that way also?
Yeah, I mean, I love Dan. He was here in Lebanon, and we toured with him in the south, and
Yeah.
did so he's a great guy. He has a lot of history in struggles that are anti-colonialist, anti-imperialist, and he is right there. But that doesn't mean that in the meanwhile there's not going to be a lot of death.
Yes.
The Zionist colony has lost the war. Yes, there's thousands upon thousands of massacred people in Gaza, in Lebanon, and this mass destruction of infrastructure and so on. But with all the combined might of the West, they were not able to defeat neither Hamas and or Hezbollah, even
Right.
with all the losses that these groups had. They had to call for a ceasefire because Israel ran out of weapons, and the West had to reorganize all its, endeavors of war around the world just to now try to resupply this, to push one more time. And we don't live in the 1800s or the 1700s when mass killings of indigenous peoples in the Americas, could be ignored or not affect the global, village. We're in 2025. Anything that happens in Palestine affects all the way to Patagonia and to New Zealand and the corners of Canada.
Yeah.
It's and you can't maintain this. And also, the U.S. empire itself is on a retreat, and its military power is waning, its financial power is waning. It doesn't mean it's over yet. I don't like those people that exaggerate the collapse of the empire. Yes, it is collapsing, but it's going to take time. It's not going to be tomorrow or something like that. So, in the meanwhile, the Palestinians and the Arabic and Muslim peoples in the region that are seeking the liberation of Palestine need to up their military game. And we saw in the first 16 months that the Axis of Resistance members decided to act morally in their war. They didn't target residential buildings. They didn't kill civilians for the hell of it. They didn't target synagogues. They didn't, they only targeted military positions, whether it's Hezbollah or Yemen or even Iran in its Truthful Promise 1 and 2, only targeted military targets. And so the axis of resistance, when this war is re-triggered, given that its morality and its appeal to human dignity around the world did not go anywhere. Yes, we had everybody out in the streets, but that didn't save any Palestinians.
Right.
Yes, Israel was condemned in courts, but again, that didn't save Palestinians or stop the killing in Lebanon or the destruction of these countries. Therefore, in any new stage of this war, the axis of resistance has to be as ruthless as our enemy if we want to survive and not be just remembered as honorable warriors like, dead indigenous nations that fought the cruelty of the US. I don't want to be just a memory of being an honorable warrior. I want to be surviving and my nation to be surviving. And thus, Israeli civilians, Israeli infrastructure, Israeli synagogues, Israeli hospitals, Israeli news outlets should all be targets. And even Western reporters in our region, just like our hundreds of reporters that are killed here, Western reporters in our region should be also targets. American bases, American businesses, this is the only way we can survive. Do I care anymore about how the populations in the West look at me? Am I like monstrous or not? It doesn't matter. My humanism, my humanity doesn't change anything in the outcome of this war. Only surviving at any cost is now what's in front of us.
Yeah. No, I am what you made me. It's that, right? It's like you guys have. I mean, because the truth of the matter is, as I report the story, I think to myself, Hamas doesn't get reporting in the West. So the only thing you get is the Israeli point of view. And the Israeli point of view usually just lies. And so, yeah, you're bombing hospitals, you're bombing and killing reporters, you're killing journalists, you're killing reporters. And the reporting in the West is very muted on that, which is, outrageous. That wouldn't necessarily be accepted. If Hamas did that, that would be front page news. Oh my God, I can't believe Hamas killed a journalist. Listen to the fact that Israel might have killed like 100. I totally understand your point on this. Laith, thank you for this. One last thing before I let you go. There's an Arab League meeting in Cairo for talks on Gaza. Give me a take on that. I've been greatly disheartened by the way Arab leaders have talked and done nothing. And now they're doing this we're trying to push this $1 billion or $35 billion deal. What do you think these talks are going to come out with? And this will be the last question.
Yeah, I mean, already Algeria is not going to be there because the Saudis, the Qataris, the Emiratis, the Egyptians and the Jordanians basically created this resolution and didn't discuss it with anybody.
Yeah.
Also, the Jolani or Julani, some people like to call him, the new governor in the
Syria.
colony now of Syria, is going to be there. So you could tell where this is going. It's going to be all talk. They're just trying to protect themselves in front of their own populations that are angry at this
Yeah.
what's happening. And I don't think no money, no food, no nothing's going to come from this Arabic non non-Arab League. Actually, it should be called. It should be called the Hebrew League or something. This is what it is. Honestly, there's
It's the
no
Hebrew.
yeah, there's no Arab sovereigns left right now. There's only Algeria is barely now the only sovereign out of all the Arabic states. Every other Arabic state um, is either partially occupied and or a total vessel of the West.
Yeah.
So, I pity the Arabic people that I'm
Yeah.
from.
I've watched
Yeah,
them complain for a year and a half and do nothing. I've
yeah.
watched them complain. I suspect it's going to keep going. Laith Marouf, he's an award-winning multimedia producer and broadcasting law consultant. You can follow Laith. Where can people find you, Laith?
You can find us on freepalestine.video, the website, and from there, there's all the links to the social media of the TV station. We're producing all this daily reports from the West Bank and Lebanon. Please follow and donate so we can continue producing this content in English.
Very cool. Thank you, Laith. Stay strong, man. Be safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. I want to take a moment. I want to say thank all of you for joining me. Hit the like button if you are indeed here and if you indeed dig this content. If you find yourself coming back here often, you can support this content through PayPal, Patreon, or for that matter, super chats, memberships, all of those things. Like people say, buy me a cup of coffee. It helps cover the content. I want to bring in my next